What up, YouTube? Welcome back. So in this video, I want to talk about a comment, or probably a couple of comments actually, that Hubert Davis made very recently. And Hubert Davis is a former basketball player, and he is now the new head coach of the UNC's men's basketball team. Congratulations to him. And this is more significant because he is the first black man, or really just first person of color, period, man or female, to have this position. Congratulations to him. And while he was making his speech about, how he feels about this historic moment, becoming the first African American coach of the team, all that good stuff, right? Taking a whole lot of pride, great, fine. But he wound up getting to a point where he felt the need for some reason to mention that he has a white wife and kids who are a mixture of his white wife and his black self, or African American self. And the thing is, I do find that to be a bit odd to throw in there. I think people probably at this point already know that he has a white wife and children who are biracial. Not a shock. That's not a shock for black men in that particular field to have non-black wives and children who are biracial, right? But for one reason or another, he felt the need to mention that. And for me, I just feel like I'm not like, where did that come from? Because he was talking about, blackity black stuff first, which is great, fine, right? But then he, at one point, maybe he felt consciously or subconsciously like, oh, maybe I'm being a bit too black. I don't want to come off like I'm being a bit, too pro-black, and too non-inclusive, I guess. So he felt the need to throw in there that, he has a white wife and biracial children. So, quote unquote, he's not too black. I'm a good one. I'm a safe one, right? Maybe that's where he was coming from with that. Maybe also as well, maybe he felt like other people may bring that up since this is about an historic moment in regards to African American men. And like, well, hey, you're African American, black, but you have a white wife. And maybe he felt like people are going to bring that up. So he'll just beat them to the punch and bring it up himself, right? Even though I don't know if many people would have brought that up. I think black women probably would have been more quick to bring that up. But women, generally speaking, don't follow sports as much as men, generally speaking. Not saying that there's not women who are not interested. Not saying there are men who are interested. But I'm just saying, right? So I think that would have been the people who were bringing it up more so. But personally, I feel like the comment, like, fine, that's okay for him to be proud to have a white wife and biracial children. He should be, if that's what he's going to pursue as far as like a relationship and family. If that's, that should be something that he should be proud of. I mean, why engage in it if you're not going to be proud of it? That'd be a bit weird. And, really, that's just across the board for everybody. If you pursuing relationships and having kids and families and marriages with folks, you should be proud of them. But some people are bringing up, well, it seems like he's more proud that his wife is white versus his wife is a good wife and mother to their kids and he has great kids. And that is an argument because he could have just said, gave a shout out to his wife. Maybe his wife is super supportive. Maybe his wife is really a great mom. Great, that's awesome, and he wanted to shout her out. But notice he just shouted her out by her race and not her name. And that's something to be aware of too. Is like, I'm sure his wife would have loved to be acknowledged by name, right? As well as his biracial kids would have probably loved to be acknowledged by name as well. And that's why I feel like this comment, doesn't hold that much weight coming from him, coming from a black man or even just a black person in general. I really feel like the comment doesn't really hold much weight. It's almost really, it's like, well, of course you would. You're like, they're white and you're black. You should be happy to be with them. I feel like low-key that's the sentiment that probably a lot of people may have. They may not admit it, but that is the sentiment. Honestly, this comment would have more weight coming from a white person saying this about their black spouse, or just a non-black or non-white spouse in general. I think it would hold more weight. Really, just him making this comment really just goes to show you that the colonizational process, like colonization was a great success. It's reaping benefits even till this day for white people, and even just subtle ways, right? It just goes to show you that that whole process, that whole system, whatever we're calling it, was successful, all right? And let's see, what else I got to say about this? And, I'll say that, if a black woman had made this comment, she would be ridiculed and dragged to the end of the earth, or the end of Twitter or social media or whatever, if she had made this comment. And not saying that Hubert is not getting any sort of criticisms, because he is, but I'm just saying that I think the criticism would be a bit strong, well, a lot stronger, had a black woman made some sort of a controversial comment like this about being proud of having a white spouse, or and biracial kids. Definitely, like if Serena Williams made this comment, folks would be going in, and folks, of course, we know by now that for one reason or another, not sure why, but folks, just love to attack black women. It's a sport. And I hope that he's not trying to sort of ingratiate himself with white people by making this comment, because that's not going to work. That's not how you do it, really. Honestly, he would have had better luck if he had a black wife and just said he's proud to be black and just stood in blackness. He probably would be able to have a better chance of ingratiating himself with white people in that aspect, or even just not mentioning it at all, right? So again, I really hope that this was not some sort of a move to try and ingratiate himself with white people, because it ain't working. It's not going to work. And as well, not trying to be shady, but I kind of feel like, this is kind of shady, but his white wife, low-key, isn't really nothing to brag about, at least in the looks department. I'm sure she's wonderful. I'm sure she's great, but she's not really like, quote unquote, like the trophy, and that's fine. It's all right. We all can't be the trophy, but as long as we are valued by the people who matter, then it's okay. But yeah, I don't feel like his wife is low-key anything to brag about. And I noticed, well, a little tiny bit. I noticed a bit of name shaming in this as well. and saying like, well, what do you expect from a man named Hubert? What do you expect? His name is Hubert. And, that is name shaming. And I don't think that black people should be engaging in name shaming other black people, whether black people have really proper sounding names or black people have more ethnic sounding names, etc. I don't think we should be engaging in name shaming people. I mean, if the name is bad and just doesn't have a good ring to it or good flow, good feel, okay, fine. But still, I don't think we should be engaging in that, because technically that would just be the equivalent of like, oh, well, her name is LaQuisha, so you should already expect her to be loud, ghetto, and ratchet, which honestly is not the case, because there are some loud, ghetto, ratchet Jessicas, Ashleys, Ambers, etc., right? Just like there are some Lakeishas and Chandrikas and what have you who don't fit into that. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of touch on that for a quick second, because that's something that I think sometimes we can kind of fall into a little bit. And I'm just saying, like, ultimately, either way it goes, I don't think we should be name shaming folks. That's all. Right. And another thing that he mentioned is that people said that this was a bit of a Freudian slip, where he said something to the effect of 26% of the Division I coaches are compromised. I think he was trying to say comprised, but he said compromised by minorities, specifically black men. And a lot of people felt that was a Freudian slip, and I think that could possibly be the case to an extent. Maybe he feels like he is being a bit of an invader, or I don't know, like he is compromising the team in some way. I don't know. I do feel that that's something that should be explored a bit more. But nevertheless, he did say it. Perhaps it was an honest mistake. Perhaps it was a Freudian slip. A mixture of both. Who knows? But overall, I feel like this may just be kind of like a low-key apology for being black to an extent, or perhaps being a bit too black to an extent. And as well, I spoke about how I have made a video about this previously, how some black men will use their non-black or non-black adjacent spouse as sort of like a way into assimilation. That's how you say it. Assimilating. They're using their non-black spouses and non-black adjacent spouses and their biracial children to assimilate. All right. That's just something that I made a video about like a while ago, actually. And just, touching on that and just my personal thoughts about that, and feeling like that could be what's at play here. Assimilation. I feel like I'm saying that word wrong. Assimilation? Assimilating. All right. But yeah, I feel like this ultimately is like Hubert Davis's way of perhaps somewhat of a very low-key apology for being, maybe a bit too black. And I'm just like, no, you shouldn't have to really apologize for being black, especially in this particular field. Like, okay, the majority of these basketball players are black, are perhaps mixed with black, one of the two will fall into some blackness in one way or another. Um, so that's a bit weird. Like, oh, we can have this whole team of black folks winning games for you, bringing prestige to the college, etc., bringing money to the college too, etc. But God forbid, a black man is the head coach. That doesn't make any sense, right? Um, but yeah, long story short, I don't think you should be apologizing, whether high key or low key, for being black, and I don't think you need to dole down your blackness. But unfortunately, realistically speaking, sometimes that is the case. Sometimes people may feel that it's the case. Sometimes it is the case. But yeah, at this point, I'm just like, let's just push some push a unapologetically black brother who's like super black, darker than 1001 Midnights, got a really ethnic hairstyle, like, dreads down to like the middle of his back, you know, black wife from Africa, South Sudan, black of the black kids, black power kids, push that. Let's see how that goes, you know. Yeah. And then there were some people who were saying like, oh, well, maybe since he brought this up within the context of accomplishments, maybe he feels like, oh, his white wife is an accomplishment and his biracial children are an accomplishment. And I will say that, his wife in general and his children in general can be considered accomplishments, you know. But as far as them being accomplishments specifically for being white or biracial, not so much, right? But, on the flip side, if a black man had came up and said that he's proud of his black wife and black kids, would we be as quick to cut it apart, and critique it as much? And then people would be like, well, no, we probably won't, because we've never heard that before. That's what we want to hear. He's being pro-black, and that's true, but and I think this is the mix up here. And like, this is the issue part of it, is like the pro-blackness versus the multiculturalism, right? Because a lot of times when it comes to black men, that becomes mixed. That gets in this, it's like it gets mixed up for some reason. It's like, on one hand, the black men are pro-black when it comes to, say, themselves and their issues and things that affect them, and that's great. Not saying that you can't be concerned about yourself. That is true. But all of a sudden fall into multiculturalism when it comes to like their spouse or their family, their familiar structure, and then be trying to say, well, the kids is mixed and mixed is black, and the black man got the seed, and the black man is the king, and blackness is the black man, and the black man is blackness, and the black man can make anything black. Black power, right? And then it falls into that where it's like, oh, really, you're engaging in multiculturalism, but you're trying to pass it off as it being pro-black, and it's not. It's multiculturalism, and that's fine. We just have to call it for what it is. We can't say that you're engaging in pro-blackness when you're engaging in multiculturalism. That just wouldn't make sense, and that ends up muddying the waters too, right? And again, also as well, if you want black kids, if you're so interested in having black kids, great, wonderful. Have black kids with black women. If it's such a big deal and such a big issue and you're so pro-black about it, wouldn't you want to go to the extreme of blackness, as far as black as you can get, you know? Yeah. And as well, generally speaking, I am very suspicious of when people's pro-blackness skips over black women. And this is for black men and black women, because there are some black women who have pro-blackness that skips over black women. When all of a sudden, like, they don't seem to be very concerned about when black women issues come up, and if it does come up, they may touch on it a little bit, and then sweep it on the rug and keep it pushing. And then black men, will probably do more or less the same thing or not even touch on it. So, for me personally, when the pro-blackness skips over black women, that's a big red flag for me. You know, you know, and as well, there's some people who will say like, "Oh, black women consider themselves to be a whole separate group from black men." And I'm like, well, are they being treated as the same group as black men? And if they are, is it only when convenient? Because people will treat you as the same group when it's convenient. But then when you start to say, well, I really don't see your advocacy really advocating for me, right? And begin to question it and begin to speak out about it and say, hey, there are some issues that black women need specifically to be addressed for them. And then there's a bit of a shaming process that may come with that, because people may feel a bit guilty about it and a bit like, oh, this is too much to do as well. So then they start shaming and saying like, oh, you think you're separate from black men. Oh, you think that, you just deserve all the advocacy. And it's like, I don't think that's true. I think black women at this point, especially, enough of them anyway, are just saying that, hey, there are some issues that black women need to be pushing specifically for themselves. And I think that just people in general may feel like may view black women as being like mules to an extent. So it's like, oh, the mule is supposed to be for our benefit, not for the mule's own benefit, perhaps. But I went on a bit of a tangent right there. So I just want to close this video out and just say thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments section. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.